My wife is severely ill, and a third pregnancy is the only cure. I am devastated. Trigger warning. Using a friend's throwaway account because my wife would be destroyed if she found out I was posting about this, but I literally have no idea what to do. Sorry if this is long, but there's a lot of context. I have been married to my wife, Claire, for 8 years, together for 10. When we met, she was open about her mental illnesses. She is diagnosed with bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, and severe chronic depression. But she was on medication and managing it well. We had a normal relationship aside from a few bumps in the road, but overall nothing I couldn't handle. When we first got married, she was adamant about not having children. Her reasoning being she didn't want to pass down her mental illnesses to her kids. I was totally okay with this, and we agreed that fostering or adoption would be a viable solution somewhere down the line when we were more stable. At this point, she'd been on birth control for as long as I'd known her. It was around 2 years into our marriage that her mental health took a sharp downward turn. Her medications were suddenly much less effective, and we began the battle to figure out what her next regimen would be. Her illnesses were resistant to almost everything, and we both suffered greatly as a result. Multiple doctors and specialists couldn't figure it out, and we were forced to adapt to a new normal. It got so bad that she had to leave the workforce because she was no longer able to hold down a steady job. I made good money, so it wasn't a problem financially, but now that she was home all the time, it seemed like her depression was worsening. Then, she got pregnant with our son. I don't know how it happened. She was on birth control, but no method is 100% effective, I guess. We were both terrified but decided to keep the baby. As a result, Claire had to get off of most of her medications, which left me preparing for the worst. Except, the exact opposite happened. Suddenly Claire was like a completely renewed person. She was happy, smiling, all traces of her mental illness was gone. She was like the woman I first met. We went out, we were so much happier. I felt like a huge relief was taken off of my shoulders. The entire pregnancy she was finally normal. It was like a breath of fresh air for both of us. At the time I assumed that the pregnancy hormones finally balanced her out, and that this might have been what she needed all along. We got more and more excited as the pregnancy progressed, and when our son was finally born, I was looking forward to finally being a father and parenting with her the way I secretly always dreamed. A few weeks after the birth, though, she fell back into her old problems. Except this time it was so much worse. She was evaluated for PPD and once again started medications, for that as well as her previous issues. If she was operating at 60% before, she was barely at 40% now. I had to max out my PTO and call in a ton of favors from family and friends to help her cope with having a child. My mother all but moved in after a while as our son got older and assumed daily care while I was at work because my wife spent all her time in bed at this point and could barely take care of herself, let alone a toddler. Our relationship was suffering severely. Therapists barely kept us both afloat. But I love this woman with all my heart, so I stepped up and did what I had to do to support her. Against all odds, for years after our son was born, Claire was pregnant again with our daughter. At this point I was suspicious. There's no way birth control fails twice, right? But the moment I saw her personality shift, I gaslit myself into ignoring the red flags. This time it was like the pendulum swung even more extremely. She became a supermom/superwife, beyond what she did during the last pregnancy. We went out on dates. Had family time. Our sex life was better than it ever had been before. My son had never seen this side of his mom before, and he grew super attached to her. She handled the household with amazing skill. Threw parties and barbecues. I didn't recognize her, but I was thrilled. Convinced myself that everything was finally over. Even though deep down inside I dreaded what would happen after our daughter was born. My suspicions ended up being correct. Claire made it about 6 weeks postpartum before the meltdown started. I'd never seen her this bad before. She became irritable and verbally abusive to me, my mother, and our son. It was like depression/anxiety/bipolar on steroids. I got pretty fed up and sent her to doctors and hospitals and therapists again. She didn't want to go, but I forced her, otherwise I said I would leave her. I never would, but I had no leverage. We tried every medication available to man, it seemed. Nothing worked. She got worse and worse. She even tried to kill herself by overdosing on pills. She ended up getting really sick and staying in a hospital for almost a month. I had a nervous breakdown. It was bad. On to present day. My relationship with my wife is non-existent. Everyone in the household walks on eggshells around her. My son is now 6 and my daughter is 2, and they're both extremely attached to her because she is so minimally involved. I feel like a single father. My mother and I are the ones raising my children, and I'm so grateful for my mother's understanding. I no longer have sex with Claire because she refuses to go back on birth control. I can't do this again. What if the cycle is even worse this time? I can't find it in my heart to divorce her because her mental illness isn't her fault and it's my job as her husband to do everything in my power to help her. But I'm stretched so thin, and so burnt out. Lately she's been hinting at me that she wants another child. I've been able to blow it off so far, either by ignoring her or putting off the conversation, but 2 nights ago I walked into the bedroom and found her crying. Despite everything, this isn't that common of an occurrence, so I asked her what's wrong. That's when she flat out told me she wants to try for another baby and that until she gets pregnant again she's just going to keep being like this. The request didn't exactly catch me off guard, but it wasn't a conversation I was ready to have. I'll be honest, I got pretty upset. Claire isn't stupid, she knows what our situation is and what another kid would do to us. So I flat out told her no. That I wasn't going to get her pregnant again because I didn't want to raise a 3rd child on my own. I was done. That her mental issues were too much for me to handle on top of 2 kids and a newborn. And that my mother was at her limit too, and I couldn't ask her to take on yet another child just so I could get 9 months of relief. My wife's reaction was about what you would expect. She became irate and accused me of not loving her and wanting her to suffer. I told her it wasn't about that, but if previous experience was any indicator, this round of postpartum would land her in an inpatient facility because I wouldn't be able to handle it. She begged and pleaded with me, saying that being pregnant was her only chance at being happy, and when I wouldn't budge she began screaming and absolutely losing her shit to the point where my mother had to take the kids elsewhere. I was in serious fear for my physical safety. But I held fast because what's the solution here? Keeping her pregnant for the rest of her life and raising 10+ kids on my own? Absolutely not. After a few hours she calmed down a little, but she's been basically inconsolable since. She said multiple times that if I didn't get her pregnant she would find a way to do it herself. She's been cold as ice to our kids and my mother. Refusing to leave the bedroom, I've been sleeping in my son's room. She refuses to see any doctors or therapists about this. Won't consider any alternatives to the real thing, hormone therapy for example. Has stopped taking her medications in protest. I'm not married to Claire anymore, I'm married to a monster. It's gotten so bad that I'm considering just giving in to her request, just one more time. Just to get my wife back. I'm desperate. IDK if I'm looking for advice or help or what. I don't want to leave her, I love her, but I have to think of my kids. It's so severe, and I know she's suffering. I feel like a failure as a husband and father. But I feel like I have no options. I could invoke some sort of power of attorney or something, but that would effectively end my marriage permanently. Besides, I don't want to be her caretaker. Where would I find the time? My kids love their mom desperately. What the fuck do I do?